And just like that, already 4 weeks of Major League Soccer in the books as Austin FC now focuses its sights on the Colorado Rapids this Saturday back at Q2 Stadium. Both teams are looking to bounce back from losses this past week. Lincoln Rose, along with the voice of the Colorado Rapids, Connor Cape. And Connor, these days I don't have to clarify what kind of voice, TV or radio. You are the English voice of the Rapids, one of the 10 originals of Major League Soccer, the Colorado Rapids, the 2010 champs. Connor, great to have you.
Lincoln, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me to take up a little bit of your time today. I appreciate it.
Connor, most important question, and you can dance around this if you want, but early in my career, I had some producers ask, "Is Lincoln Rose your real name, though?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not important enough to come up with. Just my parents get all the credit for that. Is Connor Cape your real name?"
You know, the answer is yes. The answer is yes, it is. And I started out a long time ago. I did traffic and weather reports on the radio. And one of the guys who was like kind of my mentor at the time, he told me, he was like, your name's pretty good. You don't even have to come up with a fake one. And I was like, wow, that's a great compliment. I think I don't know anything about radio, broadcasting, traffic, weather, anything that I was doing. I was so green. I was so new to it all. And to hear that, like my first week, second week on the job was pretty jarring. So, but since then, I've kept it, and I've been like, you know what? That guy told me that I don't need to come up with a fake name, so I'm just going to keep rocking this one.
All right, that's the end of our conversation. Connor, great to have you with us. No, hey, I want to point out clearly for aspiring MLS broadcasters, traffic reporter is the route you want to go. Kendra D. St. Aubin used to be a Las Vegas traffic reporter before, of course, she's gone on to being the analyst for Minnesota United, and then this year part of MLS's season pass on Apple. But it is an amazing, pardon the reference, but the roads that lead us to where we are today. You're in your sixth year. I'm not going to divulge how old you are now, but 6 years ago, you were 25 when you were given this opportunity. When I was 25, I spent my summer studying for the bar exam in Texas, but you were calling Major League Soccer. What was that experience like? Just to give people some background from Kansas City, I know you went to UMKC, had a chance to get in some broadcasts on your belt as a student, but you had actually already moved out to Colorado, hadn't you, and started covering the team, and they appreciated kind of your familiarity with the club?
Yeah, it's actually it's funny that I have a little bit of a connection to Austin FC. The head of comms, I don't know what his official title is at this point,
Yeah,
VP of comms, Ryan Madden.
never heard of them.
Right, never heard of him. Legend, right? Just a legend in the comms game, a legend in the MLS game. He's gonna really appreciate me saying that. But I moved to Denver in 2017, and I was covering the team for a different outlet, and Ryan was heading up the comms of the Rapids at that point, and him and I had bonded over a few different things. You know, one of them being University of Missouri athletics, which is
Yep.
is always something. You know, we made the tournament this year, so we're excited about that. But it's not like we're Alabama. It's not like we're Ohio State. So, you know, when you meet somebody who has that connection to Mizzou, you got to stick with each other. And that's what we bonded over. And this job came open. And I remember getting a text from Ryan, and it was, hey, this role's open. Would you be interested in applying? And it started from there. And I was like, absolutely. Like, I didn't think I had a shot at all. I didn't think I had a shot. And as the process went through, as the interview process went through, I ended up just continually advancing, I guess is the best way to put it, and somehow wound up doing this. And as you said, you know, sixth year, like it feels like it's year one. It feels like it's gone by in a flash. So um yeah, I think I owe a lot to Ryan Madden over there at Austin.
Yeah, Ryan's head of communications these days in Austin. He's a California kid, but he went to Mizzou for school. Obviously, they have a great journalism program there in Columbia. And again, both you with your ties to the Show Me State and then heading out to Colorado for your time there. How long has soccer kind of been a part of who you are and what you do?
This is actually one of my favorite questions to answer. I get this one a lot, especially in from younger people who will reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, like being like, I want to do what you do. Like, how do I do it? And they're always like mentioning, I've loved soccer. I've played soccer since I was 4 or 5 years old. And I'm just like, man, I wish I could relate to that. Like I came late to the sport. Like I really did. I got an internship in college with Sporting Kansas City when I was in KC. And before then, like I had watched soccer casually. I'd followed the World Cup teams. I'd followed the women's team being as good as they were. But like I didn't play it growing up. I wasn't a diehard of any European team or any MLS team or anything at that point. Like I didn't wake up on Saturdays at 7 a.m. to watch, Man U or Chelsea or PSG or anything like that. And that internship with SKC, like it kind of opened my eyes to like what I was missing really with soccer. Like I wish now, like looking back, I wish I'd had a chance to play it growing up, which is also how I feel about lacrosse. I wish I had a chance to play lacrosse growing up, but like, in Kansas City, it's football, it's baseball, it's basketball. Those are the sports that most of the kids play. And I wish I'd played soccer because I didn't get exposed to it in depth until later. Like I said, very casually. And then once I was interning for a team in their broadcast department and learning the ins and outs of A, broadcasting, but also B, everything about soccer, totally fell in love with the sport. I remember there's a total tangent anecdote.
That's what we're here for.
I feel free to cut it if it sucks, but I remember working with the broadcast and video team with SKC, and we were watching Champions League on a Thursday or Wednesday afternoon or something. Must have been a Wednesday afternoon. And we're there at the stadium, and it's me and 5 or 6 other folks who are all around my age, somewhere between the ages of like 19 and 30. Like everyone is familiar with being that age. And when you hang out with a group that age, like you have an instant connection almost. And we're all just sitting there watching Borussia Dortmund versus Malaga. And that's the one that Dortmund ended up coming back from behind and scoring a couple goals. I don't know if both goals they scored were in added time, but it was close. It may have been like the 89th and like the 94th minute or something like that. But it was the team Lewandowski was on his final year in Dortmund before going to Bayern Munich. And I remember seeing the tifo that Dortmund had, because it's iconic now. You still see it every once in a while on Instagram, on Twitter. It's this guy. It's like a cartoonish figure as he's being raised in front of the yellow wall. It's a cartoonish figure with like binoculars and a top hat or something like that. And it says something like "Eyes on the Prize," and it shows like the Champions League trophy. And I remember watching the walkout for that match and just being like, "Oh, I get it. This is different. This is unlike anything else that we have in American sports." Like I think college sports is maybe the closest we have to it, where it's just that raw energy, emotion, passion, and those sorts of things. And I remember watching that game specifically, and it's stuck with me ever since, that, oh, this is what soccer can be at the highest level. And since then, I've been hooked. And that would have been the spring of 2013, I think. I'm not for sure. I'm going to go look it up after this, but I think it would have been the spring of 2013.
Again, we're talking to Connor Cape in his 6th year as the voice of the Colorado Rapids. And Connor, obviously, Commerce City is one of the best home field advantages at Dick's Sporting Goods Park in all of Major League Soccer. Elevation has a little something to do with that. Austin FC always subscribes to the notion of they're going to show up the day of the match, hoping that somehow that elevation does not catch up to them before those 90 minutes are over. We saw them implement that in Sandy, Utah as well against RSL these past couple of years. You don't have to name names, but we want you to. Have you ever seen visiting broadcasters come to town and that elevation catch up to them perhaps before they leave the match that evening?
Oh man, I'm now circling back through my Rolodex of memories of who has walked the halls of the third floor at DSGP. And it's interesting that you say that about arriving the day of, because somewhere on the staff with Austin FC is Chad Kolarczyk, and he used to be on the staff with the Colorado Rapids when I first started. He was here. I think we both had the same first year actually before he made the move to Austin. And we talked about elevation at times. And we talked about the role that it plays and the effects that it has. And teams are starting to catch up to it a little bit, at least the science behind it, the sports science behind the elevation. And the thinking goes that you show up as late as possible. So like day of, or, 10 p.m. the night before, to try to, stay out in front. Like what was it you said just a few minutes ago? Like you stay out in front of the elevation before it catches up to you. Like that's real. And I remember Chad talking about that. So I'm excited to see Chad this weekend. Shout out to him. But man,
yeah, I don't think we traded him for Tanner Kaufman directly, but there have been some people going back and forth. Tanner has the unenviable job now of melting snow off of that pitch shortly before match day. And obviously the moment he gets all the snow off, then some new snow blankets the field all over again. Yeah, Austin with its training center actually has some chambers that they can train their bodies in. But on top of that, so far, and this dates back to the pandemic when you were supposed to travel the day of the match to limit your exposure just in general via travel. But I think Austin so far has found some success subscribing to that notion. I mentioned how well Colorado has played at home. Last year, despite having one of the best home records in all of MLS, they missed out on the postseason. These two clubs met each other in that regular season finale, knowing that was going to be it for Colorado. Now, of course, Diego Rubio still had a little something to play for. He was trying to tie the single season goal record. He found that 16th goal for Colorado by the end of the match. But when you look back at 2021, 2022, you go from first in the West to missing out on the postseason. What was the biggest difference between those two seasons on the field for Colorado?
That's a good question. And I think to a man, everybody would say that it was performances on the road. Like everybody knows Colorado is a tough place to play, and the Rapids have really done a good job of turning Dick's Sporting Goods Park into a quote unquote fortress. Everyone wants to make their home field as much of an advantage as possible, and the Rapids really did that the last couple of years. And last year, still one of the best teams at home. I think I'm totally getting stats confused now with this year, now that we're a couple weeks into it. But I want to say one of the best home records last season. And since 2021, before last weekend's matches, the Rapids had the third highest winning percentage at home in Major League Soccer, to give you an idea of just how successful they are at home. And when you have that sort of success on your home pitch and you miss the playoffs, like all you can do really is point to your road form. And last year, we only had one win on the road, and yeah, it was a really epic comeback against Red Bulls in New Jersey. But this was a team that I think everybody would point to the road form and say that was the biggest roadblock between them and the playoffs, which was so crazy because 2021 they were so good on the road, and that was part of what vaulted them and catapulted them to top of the West in 2021 was their road form. And then 2022, it just kind of fell off. It wasn't there. It was difficult to replicate. I don't know what the variance was. I don't know what the reasons are, but just looking at it numerically, the road form last year was probably the biggest factor that played a role in the Rapids missing the playoffs.
Robin Fraser, when he looks at the ingredients he has for this year, not any seismic changes. Obviously, you have the retirement of Drew Moore. You have some players coming in. Cole Bassett returning. Obviously, he was a great addition this past week to the score sheet, getting Colorado on the board for the first time this year. Obviously, heartbreaker with Jack Price now, the captain, being lost for the season, just shy of 10,000 minutes in his career. This is after he was battling a back injury and some other knocks last year. But when you look at the few pieces that were added, what has fans most excited coming into this year?
It's probably Cole Bassett, which I don't know if that counts as an addition or not, since he's coming back from a loan in the Netherlands. But this is a guy that we've had the privilege of being able to talk to Robin before each match this week and really get his thoughts, kind of an off the record like broadcast production call and be like, hey, what's the formation going to be? What are you trying to do? What are you taking advantage of? What's impressed you? And, the different Apple broadcasters are always on these calls as well. And they're always asking about Cole Bassett. And they're asking about like what's different from, his before he went to Europe versus now when he's come back. And, the biggest thing is just the kid's got a chip on his shoulder, like 21 years old, and he's already experienced Europe and he's already experienced those types of environments. And that's just not just a game day environment, although that's huge, but the other environment that matters is locker room environment. Like, what does it take to be a professional at the European level? What's different about the European level versus the MLS level? And I think, one thing we hear all the time is that the gap between the two is shrinking, but it's still there. And to have Cole Bassett come back from that and take everything that he's learned in Europe and just part of the maturation process and the aging process and getting better. He's still 4 or 5 years away from the prime of his career. And he's already come back with a chip on his shoulder. He's already come back pissed off and wanting to make this team as good as it was in 2021 when he left. So I don't know if it counts since he was on loan and he gets to come back from that. But that's a guy that people need to watch out for all year long, because even if he's not showing up in the stat sheet, which, as you mentioned, he did Saturday night against Minnesota, but even when he's not, he's making a difference for this team and this club. And that's short term and that's long term too. Like, he's going to make a difference short term when it comes to scoring goals and pressuring players. He has an endless motor. He will sprint all 90 minutes if he has to, but it's also setting the standard for younger players like him and Sam Vines and some of the other homegrowns like Courtney Ford and Dylan Cerna who aren't with the first team now. The kids in the academy now, the kids growing up in Colorado, they look to those guys as, what is my path to Major League Soccer? What is my path to the first team? How do I replicate that? And there's no better role model than somebody like Cole Bassett. Obviously, Sam Vines is great, but it's a little tougher to watch him play every Saturday versus you just go out to Dick's Sporting Goods Park and you can watch Cole Bassett play and you can watch him and the intensity that he has and the professionalism that he has. And seeing that is only going to make the academy better long term. So it's got to be Cole Bassett.
For fans who haven't followed Colorado, again, through the first 3 matches, no goals. They suit up against Minnesota, and Bassett, if he didn't learn anything else in Europe, he at least learned geometry. He found the perfect angle, shooting across the face of goal, hitting one off the post, having it go in. And TV can only do it so much justice. When you looked at the fans, I mean, how cathartic was that to take a lead 1-0 in that match and to be on the score sheet?
Yeah, it feels like a culmination of all the hard work that's gone into it. Obviously you and I know what these teams have been going through since January. Like, you get ready for an MLS season months before it begins, and these guys win a few games without a goal, and that's hard. Like, that's hard on a psyche. And so to get one and to have it come from a player who's as influential as Cole is huge relief. And it says that what this team is doing is right, and they're pointed in the correct direction. They're pointed in the right direction, and they need to keep working at what they're doing, because the goals are going to come. Like, you have Cole Bassett, you have Diego Rubio, who's now returning from injury, and you mentioned earlier, such a big part of this attack. And then you've got wingers with experience like Barrios, Kevin Cabral, who's been in this league for a long time now, and Sam Nicholson, who's got experience in this league. Like, everything they're doing is right. You just need the breaks to go your way. And that break was off the inside of the post. Like, sometimes it's a game of inches. We talk about American football being a game of inches, but soccer is a game of inches too. If that ball is 2 or 3 inches more to the right, it's bouncing off the post and coming back out instead of spinning in. And so, like you said, that's a huge cathartic moment for this team, and I think it gives them a lot of belief going forward that, okay, the first couple of weeks were difficult, but yeah, we're still a team who can score, and we're going to score going forward.
Obviously, when Bassett was on loan in Europe, it was a game of centimeters, but thankfully he was able to convert back to inches in time. We talk about 21 years young, but Shoot, that's pretty old compared to a couple of his teammates who are out there right now with Yapi and Yaya. What have you seen from those two in taking the next step in being everyday professionals out there on the field?
Man, yeah, like that's a guy that you want to see compete every day. And we saw it. I mentioned it earlier. We saw it in that Red Bulls game last year. He gets to go back to his home state and score such a monumentally huge goal, and then just a little while later suffer an injury that's going to keep him out for a while. It's tough. It sucks, but I think he's got all the pieces around him that he's going to come back better than he was before. I think he's going to end up being a guy who has a major impact on this team for as long as he's on it. And maybe that's just a short while. Maybe he ends up going to overseas or something like that. That's so many young guys' goal now. But that injury's it's tough. Like anytime someone tears their ACL, like it's tough, especially at a younger age, especially when he just had that first taste of success at the highest level of American soccer. To have it come right after that is brutal, but also hopefully that taste of success gives him motivation going forward and getting healthy and getting back. And then for Yappy, I feel like it's just a matter of time. Like, he started in Austin last year on decision day and then has started every match up until now. And then, he's going to go to the national team, gets called up, but it's just a matter of time. Like the goals are going to come for him. We thought we had one against SKC, ends up being waved off, but that first one's going to hit. And then I think it's going to be goals flowing constantly for him. Like Robin talks about it all the time. He's got a big body and he's starting to do different things with the ball that most players his age are not doing. A lot of kids in there, when their age ends with the suffix teen, they're not shaping balls. They're not making intelligent runs. They're not doing all the little things that matter. And he's already doing those things at 18. Like he's already figuring out some of the smaller nuances of the game. And watching him in training, watching him day to day, like, it's coming. It's just a matter of time. And that's part of what, MLS is hard. Like the guys he's going against, they're grown men too. Like they're guys with families and they're guys who are thinking about like, I got to defend against this 18-year-old or else how am I going to put food on the table? That's a motivating factor as well. That's really, really motivating for guys. And so for Yappy, I think it's just adjusting to that. Like prior to this, it's not the same level. MLS is just a different jump from other leagues in North America. Obviously, aside from Liga MX, but he didn't play in that, so it doesn't matter. But it's a jump up from anything else that he's been exposed to, and it's just adjusting to it. And then once that first goal comes, the second goal is going to come, and it's the third, and it's the fourth, it's the fifth, and maybe by the transfer window this year, by late August, September, we're talking about Darren Yappy having a bag full of goals and a fantastic campaign at 18 years old. And we start talking about, well, what's the limit for this guy? Just how high can he go? I look at Wiley in Atlanta. Dude's come onto the scene out of nowhere. He's bagging in goals, and it's fantastic for him. And that is what I think Yappy's going to do as soon as he starts scoring goals, which the league better watch out, because once it starts, it's going to be really, really hard to stop.
Well, Austin's lone teenager in the starting lineup found his first goal at altitude against RSL, but Austin's without him for the next couple of weeks. Talking about Owen Wolf, he's going to be with the U20s with the United States, and Austin will have its first ever senior national team call-up. Leo Vaesen, the new center back this year, so they will not feature this weekend against Colorado. Conversely, the Rapids, of course, Diego Rubio, we mentioned, great season last year, did have the offseason surgery, is now working himself back, made his debut on the season off the bench against Minnesota, but Diego presumably not with the club this weekend. Is there anybody else I'm overlooking that won't be traveling because of international reasons for Colorado?
I think those are the two. We can check real quick, but I believe those are
Diego, of course, with the Chilean national team,
which is awesome for him because he's somebody who had such a fantastic season last year, and then to take an injury and come back from it and still be picked for the Chilean national team. Like that to me is indicative of what the rest of the world saw in Diego Rubio's 2022. And yeah, I'm just seeing Yappy and Diego here.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Rubio, of course, his last impact against Austin was a heartbreaking equalizer in Austin on decision day. That's back when Jossie Zardes was wearing burgundy. Now, he did not feature in that matchup, but what was Jossie's limited time like? He was traded early in the season from Columbus to Colorado. What did you get to see from a guy that most American soccer fans have come to know, whether it's in the red, white, and blue or winning MLS Cup with both the Galaxy and the Crew?
well. First off, there's two things, and first of all, is Jossie Zardes is a top tier, top notch human being, just fantastic to talk to. He treats you like you're an individual. He treats you like you are no different than him. And sometimes, dealing with professional athletes, you don't always get that. But I remember we were in New York City last year. We were playing NYCFC and we were in the meal room. It was either the day before the game or the morning of the game. And I was in the meal room with one of the other guys who's staff members, and Jossie comes up to us and sits down at our table and just starts asking us. He's like, "Hey, you guys watch the new Stranger Things?" And treating us like we're completely equal, like we're no different, just a normal, regular conversation.
He's got young
And
kids, but let's not pretend that show isn't watched by a few 30 and 40-year-olds out there as well.
apparently it is, because Jossie loved it and we were talking about it. And so that was fantastic. A highlight for me was just what a fantastic human being that Jossie was,
Yeah.
the way he treated everybody. And everybody around the club would tell you the same exact thing. And then on the pitch, I think, what he did was he scored goals. Like he came in and he scored. He didn't score any outrageous bangers. Like he wasn't curling one in from outside the box. But what he did was he was in the right place at the right time. He cleaned up messes in front of goal. And if goalkeepers weren't absolutely on their A game that night, Jossie was going to beat them. And he did that to the tune of, it was 8 or 9 goals last year. And you look around MLS, look at how many other guys got close to 10 goals. Like it's a few guys, but it's not as many as you'd think. Like scoring is hard in MLS. The defenders get paid too. I know I've already said that, but it's true. The defenders get paid too. And that's what I think everyone has to remember about attackers is these guys are laying down their lives to stop a shot. Guys are diving in front of shots to try to stop it from going into their goal. And Jossie finds ways to get around them. And that's just an immense an immeasurable value. He scores goals. He's a guy that I'm excited to watch in Austin, because I think that attack is going to be really suited to his style. Where if Driussi, rebounds a shot off the post, or a goalkeeper spills a shot from Driussi or something like that, then Jossie's going to be there to clean it up, tuck it away, and he's going to be worth 8 or 9 goals.
Again, it'll be Austin FC and Colorado Rapids this Saturday. They met twice last year. It was 4th of July last year that Maxi Urruti led a comeback for Austin with the help of that guy named Sebastian Driussi along the way for a win at Commerce City. They split the points on decision day last year, Colorado finding that equalizer late. So what's your final takeaway from the Minnesota match? You go up 1-0, only for Minnesota to claw back a couple of goals. And for Robin Fraser, obviously still some bumps and bruises, losing Jack Price as well off the bench now. 17 different guys have started. What are his biggest questions looking at the lineup after Minnesota for this weekend against Austin?
Oh, man, where to begin? I guess you got to start with Jack. That's the captain. And I just said it about Jossie being a fantastic human being off the pitch. Jack's the same way. Jack's a fantastic human being to talk to. He's a fantastic human being to interact with and to root for. And he's somebody that I've always felt a little kindred spirit with, because we joined the club in the same year, 2018. We're the same age. And to watch him ascend to the captaincy when Tim Howard left, like nobody's more deserving of it. Nobody puts the work in more on and off the pitch than Jack Price. So to lose him to an Achilles, like it's just brutal, man. It sucks. It's tough. And, you know, the wrong things happen to good people all the time. And it just sucks because you're going to miss his leadership. You're going to miss his bulldog mentality. You're going to miss his service on set pieces going forward. So to lose him is a huge bummer, but part of this offseason was bringing in depth. Part of this offseason was continuing to cultivate the depth that may not have been there in the years past. And that's guys like Brian Acosta, who's got a real opportunity now. He can step up and really be the guy. We saw flashes of it last year. You know, Jack only played 17 games in 22. And so we saw a lot of Brian Acosta, and that's a guy who can be a real enforcer on the pitch, but also Connor Ronan. He's acquired from Wolves this offseason and brought in to compete. And he started every match so far, and we've seen nothing but incredible work rate and service from the guy. Like, I think he's already exceeded expectations. And in the Minnesota game, we saw flashes of him being goal dangerous. Like, he gets a little open space and he sprints through it and he sprints by guys, and he left Kervin Arriaga in the dust, and he had him slipping and falling, and he went the other way around him and lined up a shot. And I think as we continue to see that from him, it's only going to get better for Connor Ronan. But the Minnesota game, it sucked, man. Like, you know, you get a lead at home and you feel like you shouldn't relinquish those. And I think the part that stings about it is you score to open the second half and then you give up a penalty 5 minutes later, literally 5 minutes later. So the Rapids never really got a chance to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and then dominate it the way we've seen them in years past when they take the lead at home. Minnesota, credit to them, they responded so strongly after conceding, which we don't always see at DSGP. Teams don't always have that mentality when they go down at elevation. And Minnesota had the right mentality, and they got a penalty out of it. And once things got equalized, then it was just somebody searching for a winner, and a nice set piece from Minnesota ends up going into the back of the net, and it's tough. But as a whole, you're hoping that if you're Colorado, like, you're not going to end up conceding a penalty every time you score. So you feel a little snake bitten, I think, about that and the way the result went. And part of that's, you know, it's just a huge credit to Minnesota that they went down to start the second half and they could have packed it in. They could have said, all right, you know, we're at elevation. We're going to take our lumps. We're going to go home. And instead, they showed tremendous fight and got back in it with that penalty. But that's really the difference maker, is that penalty just prevented Colorado from getting into cruise control and adding a second, adding a third, things that we've seen this team do when they go up at home. So it's I don't want to make excuses, because I don't think anybody in the locker room, I don't think anybody in the coaching staff is making excuses. So I don't want it to make it sound like it's just that, but you feel a little snake bitten, and you also feel like you're really close to getting 3 points if some of the 50-50 balls bounce your way.
Of course, that's a Minnesota team entering the year with obviously their own obstacles to overcome, missing a pretty good Argentine, that they still have a question mark in terms of how they're going to fill those shoes. It's just another day in the life of the Western Conference here in Major League Soccer, where the top 6 teams that made the postseason, including Colorado 2 years ago, did not make the postseason last year. Conversely, Austin was able to make that first appearance. And sure enough, here we are, a whole lot of question marks already a month into Major League Soccer. Before we let you go, again, folks can tune in and watch, obviously, on MLS Season Pass, Apple TV. Adrian Healy, who might have a few connections with the Verde and Black, will be on that call with Kobe Jones. So if you want to switch to the radio call, probably not great news for the Colorado fans, because that's going to be the Austin FC radio guy. So remind them where they can find your call. And of course, you'll be with Brian Crookman once again, who, if he has it his ways, you will not be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs throughout the broadcast.
I can tell you've done your research. Yeah, everybody likes to give me grief about the Chiefs, but that's just because I'm in Denver. Broncos Chiefs rivalry. It's fine. We're at altitudesportsradio.com. And depending on if we're on 92.5 FM or 950 AM, you can stream us there. It's on the website, on the app. around the world, anywhere where you are. We like to think that we put on a pretty good show. It was Cal Williams, who used to be Minnesota United FC's play-by-play guy, who's now with Apple doing the season pass. He said, you want to be 59 for the team that pays you, 49 for the other team. And we like to think that that's how we do it. Me and Brian, it's 59 Colorado Rapids, 49 the other team, because nobody wants to sit there and listen to a couple homers or anything like that, but just a little bit in favor of the burgundy and blue.
You let your knowledge of that club kind of speak for itself. And I find that's the case with most of the announcers around Major League Soccer. Brian, of course, the GM of the next pro side for Colorado. That's similar thing that St. Louis City is doing this year, is Joey Zanaboni is paired with a decision maker for their MLS Next Pro side. So that gives you some extra insight for the fans of what is waiting in the wings, and perhaps some of the first team players who make their debuts, what they can have to offer. Of course, for those tuning in, wanting a Verde tint to their broadcast, we are back on 97.5 FM. We will be the home radio option on the MLS Season Pass this weekend, but I'll understand if my listenership is down with the long-awaited return of Adrian Healy on the TV side, with a pretty decorated American soccer player with Kobe joining him. I'll note also that Sonny Guadarrama, our former Spanish language TV analyst, will be on the Spanish language call. So a lot of great options for Austin fans as well. But Connor, for 6 straight years, Colorado's been spoiled with you. I know there's a good legacy that preceded you there as well, but appreciate your time. Looking forward already to Saturday, getting here as soon as possible. It'll be the first of 2 meetings this year between Austin FC and the Colorado Rapids.